Hi, guys. Happy Sunday. Happy Sunday. And welcome back to another episode of Chic Chat Podcast, where we chat all things women. Look, I need you guys chiming in today because, this is one of our open chat sessions, and I want to really get you guys engaged in this episode today. We're going to be highly engaged in a topic that's been surfacing around the internet, been surfacing around conversations. And so I want you guys to kind of chime in today and let us know what you think, what's your opinion on it as well. As you guys know, that Netflix came out with a document series um, of the Sean P. Diddy Combs documentary. And so it has been a very pretty much well talked about documentary. And so I want to kind of get your engagement on it because, there's been so many mixed reviews based off of the documentary. But I do want to say, based off of a lot of conversation that people are talking about, and some people are avoiding to talk about, um, you know, this episode, is for us to engage in the conversation. It's not about us canceling a culture. It's not about us gossiping. It's not about us passing judgment. And it's about us having a conversation and a reflection and on accountability. And so, with that being said, we're not trying to be accusatory or anything. We want to make sure these are allegedly things that Netflix has placed in their documentary, and so these are things that we're going to be discussing, just like everybody else has discussed. I do want to make note that I do want to provide a safe space for everybody to provide their different opinions. All opinions are welcome. You don't have to agree with it with me. You don't have to agree with anyone else to be part of this conversation. This documentary has stirred up a lot of emotions. A lot of shock, a lot of confusion, a lot of anger, a lot of disbelief, a lot of sadness, and even some defensiveness. And all of that is still valid. So we want to make sure that people know that that's valid. You know, all of that is welcome. We want to hear from you based off what you got out of it when you watched it, and as you watched the documentary, what was your reaction? What was your response? Were you angry? Was you in denial? Were you shocked? Did anything change for you? Did your views based off the person, based off of Diddy, did it change towards him based off what you've seen in the documentary? So we're going to discuss all of that. So again, this will be a safe space. So nobody has to, you can't agree to disagree. Nobody has to agree with me or anyone else on this platform. We're here to respect everyone's opinion and to allow the difference of opinions to be welcome on this platform. We just want to hear from you guys and hear everyone's difference of opinion and let it be well known and channeled. So with that being said, it was a lot. I finished watching it, and I definitely can say it was a lot. I wasn't following a whole lot of the trial stuff when the trial stuff was going on. And I did that on purpose because I wasn't interested. And but because the documentary came out, normally when documentary comes normally is done is usually, it usually kind of gives some facts based off of things that's been researched. And so I kind of like to look at documentaries because they tend to be based off of research and factual things that has been kind of researched or validated. And so it tends to draw my attention when it becomes a documentary. And so that's why I wanted to watch that, but I didn't pay attention to any of the trials and of stuff when that was going on, because I didn't want nobody else's opinion and all that kind of stuff to be going on, or to taint my opinion of what I had already thought and what I've already made, based off the things that had already been put out, and I had based my opinion on the facts that I had been given. But we're going to open that up. We're going to open that up today. So chime in today. I know this is some stuff, but this is necessary stuff that we need to talk about. This is cultural stuff. This is social stuff. This is stuff that's happening. This is someone who grew up in our pop culture, in our culture that, most of us grew up listening to or knew of, based off of, if you listen to hip hop and all of that. And so he had a lot of fans, and based off the fans that he had, and he had, gained based off of that, that tend to cause people to have a lot of, feelings and emotions when they hear all the other things that has transpired. So we want to open that up. We want to open the dialogue up for people to kind of chat and talk about that. So come on in the room and let's open that up. Let's open that up and let's chat about it. We're gonna get to chatting about it. And look, if you joined us last week, we had our holiday gift giveaway on Chic Chat Podcast. So thank you guys, the ones who checked in last week with us, and those of you who won prizes. Your prizes is on the way. We got all those prizes shipped off. So you should be getting those this week, as early as Wednesday of this week. So thank you guys for tuning in with us and playing the games, the fun things we did for you guys to have an opportunity to win those prizes. So again, thank you from Chit Chat Podcast. We want to have an opportunity to give back during the holidays. And that was our way of giving back to you guys with that holiday fun day last Sunday and giving out those holiday prizes. So thank you guys, and those who won prizes. Your prizes are on the way, so you'll be getting those this week. But with that said, let's go. Let's dive into this, guys. Let's dive into this. So we're talking about the Diddy documentary that's on Netflix. And if you have not seen it or whatever, hopefully you get a chance to see it or whatever. But those of you who had an opportunity to watch it, and my question to you is, what was your first reaction? Was you shocked? What was there anger? Is this something that you felt like, I already knew this? Did it make you change your views or how you saw Diddy at all? So that's my first question to you guys. What was your first reaction? Watching this, when you completed watching this documentary, what was your first reaction? Was you in denial? Like, I don't believe none of this stuff? Or was it an anger thing? Was it something like, we already knew this? Or did it actually make you change how you saw or view Sean P. Diddy Combs? Chime in the chat. Let's see. Let's talk about that. Because, sometimes, it opened our eyes, documentaries open our eyes up to things, things that we don't necessarily see or hear that goes on in court. Because, a lot of things that happen in court is not always open to the public. And so, so we don't get access to know some of the things that happen. So let us know. And I got to drink water so I don't cough. I'm trying to keep from getting sick. We had a COVID bug going around at work. So I've been like medicine up all weekend. So Jada said, I wasn't shocked, to be honest. Okay. So you wasn't shocked, Jada. So that means most of this stuff you already knew or you was aware of. Is that what you're saying? Because I didn't follow the trial. I didn't follow a lot of the trial. So I wasn't trying to pay attention to a lot of the stuff that happened or what was said in the trial. The majority of stuff that I knew ahead was the Cassie stuff. I knew that based off the previous videos that had surfaced about her and, about her abuse. And, and because I've dealt with physical abuse before, that, that's one of the things that underlines and irks me. And so, yeah. So when I seen that, that was enough for me. So regardless of how they try to, portray the victim in court or whatever, it does something to me when it comes to that. Usually men that are in power, hot skeletons. That's always the price to pay. Yeah. Yeah. I think that, that was going to be my next question because, sometimes we don't appreciate, the things that goes on, behind the scenes in culture or in entertainment because we don't know a whole lot that goes on because it's hidden behind so much power and money and other things. But you know, people that are in position with power usually have, and 9 times out of 10, money, contributes to that. 9 times out of 10, that money pushes that power and it puts them in a position to make decisions with people who don't have that or who don't have that capability. And so when they in a position where they don't have that capability, it's an intimidation and a manipulation tactic. And so that's what people in power use. They use that as a manipulation and intimidation tactic because they know that person don't have the power to fight me back because they don't have the money, to fight me. I'll spend all this money in court and they won't have the money to fight me back. So those kind of things that people in power would do to use manipulation tactics and strategize like that when they know people, who don't have what they have, that can fight them back with. Hence our president, but that's another time, another day. Okay. Yeah. So we talking about, I think with the documentary too, it pushed a lot on accountability because when you looked at the documentary, it highlighted all the people that worked for him. Hey Diana. So I wanted to hit on accountability because you're talking about people that work for him, and so accountability becomes very important at this point. So how big is accountability when you work for someone who is doing things unethically wrong, doing things wrong, and you stand by and allow those things to be done wrong until something tragically happens or whatever? Like, do you not feel like you're just as guilty as the party that's doing it? I mean, is there not any guilt that should be like transferred there? Like, what do y'all think? Do y'all think that guilt should be like there's some type of guilt that should be transferred there? I mean, if you're watching the very act of something happening and you're not saying anything or you're not doing anything. Now, granted, I know that some people probably were scared. They probably were scared for their life. However, you know, um, you know, you got to start, people got to say stuff. I mean, you got to realize that, at some point you got to be able to, you know, test the waters. I look, I can't put myself on the line either. I'm pretty sure there was a lot of guilt from the people surrounded by him. Yeah, and it still probably bothers them. I think, it's still probably, it will bother me. It bothers me. Let me tell you how accountability works with people. If you're a person where, things bothers you when it comes to things that are unethical, or things that that's not right, and things that are being done wrong, and it don't sit right with you or whatever, and you stand by and let things continue to be done wrong, and you're okay with it, then, to me, I feel like you're just as guilty as the guilty party. um you know I had I've been struggling with that. It was one of the things that I've been struggling with, this whole entire year. And it was one of the reasons why I made the decision that I was going to retire early. Granted, my decision was going to be, I was going to wait to retire when I'm, 57. But I decided I was going to retire early because there's a lot of things that I don't agree with. And because I have pushed myself, to strive for, places of positions that I want to be in, there's those positions and places that are compromised, and that you're not allowed to do what you want to do and be what you need to be. And I don't want to be in those positions where I got to be told how I need to do the job, and I can't do the job like I need to do the job. And so I made the decision to retire early. And that's what I plan to do, because I can't, at some point you can't just stand around and watch things be done, and feel like, it's okay, because it's not okay. It's not okay. Diana said accountability is him coming forward, apologizing genuinely, and doing his time like he should. Okay. So you think that's accountability? Okay. And Jada said, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of get. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I think, when I was looking at the documentary also, um, there was people that worked for him that had to be subpoenaed to like testify, to go to court to testify. Like they were not even trying to even go unless they was forced to go. And my whole thing is like, why not? Like why not? You know, um, because at the end of the day, like, you know, you're I mean, there's people, you've seen the cause and effect of the things that have happened. And there's things that he don't, that don't got away with, so why wouldn't you stand up for for what's left to be, have justice for. Hey, really? Hey, really? Good for you when you're doing it. You give everything. Love you, Sherelle. Also, I have not watched the documentary. You haven't? Oh, you're gonna have to watch it. We won't spoil it too much for you, but yeah, you have to watch it. But it's definitely an eye opener. But one of the things that I really loved is can we appreciate someone's contributions to culture while still holding them accountable for the alleged harm? So that was my next question. Can we appreciate someone's contributions to culture while still holding them accountable for the alleged harm? So can we like appreciate Diddy's contributions to what he's given to the culture, to hip hop, to what he's done for the culture, but still hold him accountable for the alleged harm that he's done. Do y'all think that's fair? Money and greed. Absolutely, Sherelle. Absolutely. That's what it's all about. I think they scared for their lives, like how he sent 50 those flowers, but 50 knows how to deal with a person like that. Yeah, yeah. I think, oh, that's why I said, people with power and money, they would use they use those scare tactics. Like they try to use that to intimidate you, and use those to try to keep you from doing what you feel like is necessary for you to do. But that's the question. Can we appreciate his contribution to the culture and still hold him accountable for what he's done? No, I think it goes out the window, but people still support R. Kelly. Okay. Because we in like a cancel culture um, society now. Most people be like, because I know it was a time where when R. Kelly was going through his trial and all that kind of stuff, people were canceling R. Kelly. We ain't listening to R. Kelly. Some radios were like, we're not playing R. Kelly. I remember when Chris Brown went through his assault case, against Rihanna. You know, people was like they didn't want to play Chris Brown songs. And all these stuff was allegedly stuff. He had not been charged. And all this kind of stuff, and social media networks and all that was still like pretty much canceling him. And they was like, we're not gonna play his songs, we're not gonna play his music or whatever. So we live in a society where we're like, people are like, it's a cancel culture. I mean, look how it is with Target. you know, we we've been canceling Target. So it's like a cancel culture. And so the moment, a person does any harm or anything, it's like, no, forget the contributions, you know, um, we don't cancel this joke. We don't cancel this joke, or we don't cancel this person kind of thing. So people still support business and shop at the same companies who are against us. It's just disappointing because music is so good. Like the impact was good, but it's frustrating because at some point you do have to stop supporting a person. Yeah, it's like, and Target customers, including myself, still shop there. Yeah, I love Target, y'all. I love Target. Look, and so I think we have not gotten to the cancel culture like back in the day when they had the Montgomery boycotts. The Montgomery boycott was a big cancel culture statement. Like when they cancel, we're not gonna ride no more buses. We're gonna stick together. Like if you need a ride to work, if you need a ride somewhere or whatever, they stuck together and worked together to get people so people would not fall victim and try to get on the buses. So they completely debilitated that system. And so we have not successfully done that. Because there's people like, I love Target, I still love Target, I still love R. Kelly. I my second child was born off of R. Kelly. So it's all these things that people are just like, I can't give up such and such, I can't do that, I can't. So we have not successfully done what's necessary to like cancel things, to make that statement. So I think that's where the accountability stands, where people are not really fully held accountable. Because Diddy's probably, he's probably sitting there in prison like, yeah, I still got fan base out there supporting me, that still love me and support me, and there for me, cheer me on, praying for me, all this kind of stuff. And so but if he had a culture that totally had canceled him, they was like, look, we ain't listening, we ain't trying to hear. all this, we support the victims and all this and all, and he didn't have that support, I think then that's when the accountability will really stick to the people who are doing these things, and their money and their power will not no longer have no, it won't have no form of no sense of anything to stand on then, because you know that's why they use it, because they can utilize it because it has something to stand on still. They still know that they have support somewhere. They still know that they have people out there that still cheering them on and supporting them and doing all these things. But if they was totally canceled, nah. But he's had these allegations for years. But why do we always have to have evidence to go with the allegation instead of believing the victims? This goes years back. He's just getting caught up and can't cover his mess. Yeah, and and I was going to bring that up to another question. Um, does power in the industry protect people longer than it should? Like, because there was victims that came out before with allegations before, and it didn't hold a lot of merit, and it was kind of just swept up under the rug, or a lot of it was allegedly told that it was people was paid behind the tables and up under the rug, and so it was swept under the rug, and they was you know paid and told to shut up and color, hush, and go on about their business or whatever. So does power in the industry protect the people longer than they should? you know was that power that he's had in the industry, did it protect him longer than it should? Because there was things that happened years ago that could have been that should have been exposed and should have been like dealt with. Maybe as people go back on our own boundaries sometimes instead of standing firm. Yeah, I agree. Right. 100. We have that power, but we don't come together like that, like the past. How can we get our power back? Yeah, we got to stand firm. We got to stand 10 toes down. And it's going to be hard because I know that some of us are like, we, how are we going to be able to do that? But we going to have to just think how hard it was for those people, because most of them didn't even have vehicles. That was their main transportation system, was the bus. And they had to utilize asking people for rides, and people utilizing their cars, and making schedules and systems, and creating a system, and utilizing the village and all of that. But that brings the village back together. That brings the units back together. That brings the families back together. So it can be done. We just got to do it. We just got to be able to stick together and do it. you know um a lot of other cultures stick together way quicker than the brown culture, the black and brown cultures do. And we need to do a whole lot better than that, because we're the most targeted culture now. And so we definitely need to have a solid system when it comes to uniting and having a united front, especially when it comes to canceling cultures and standing 10 toes down about stuff. Especially when it comes to us buying back our power, because our power is not spending our money, not giving our money. That's how we get our power back. You know, you can't. I'm not spending my dollar there. I'm not giving you my dollar or whatever. And so that's how we get our power back. We buy our power back, because if I'm not spending my money, you lose business. And it's always the men wanted to take up for the men, because it's just a man in power, and they feel as if women just try to take them down because of it. I've had this convo before and heard an opinion like that. I've heard, and those are some of the mixed conversations I've heard or whatever. I was actually on a different social media platform, and somebody had said, had mentioned it, whatever. And I hadn't completed the documentary, but I had just seen parts of it. And my opinion was, I had posted, and my opinion was, they asked something about what was our thoughts on, him, based off the documentary. I said, well, I haven't finished it, but based off what I know so far, my opinion is he's gonna reap what he's sown. I mean, you know, that's Bible. I mean, you and worldly people say karma, but whatever you put out in the world, you gonna get back, and it may not come back quickly, but trust and believe it's gonna come back. Your address and your number is gonna come up. And so when I said that, this guy was like, how you know that? Baby, just like the old folks say, keep living. Whatever you put out there, whether it's good or bad, whatever you put out is gonna come back to you. So whatever you trying to put out there, you better make sure whatever is going out is good enough that you want to receive back. So, so I was going back and forth with this guy about that, because he was like, well, how do you know that? I was like, I mean, you reap what you sow, karma. I mean, however you want to call it. Sometimes even engaging, liking, commenting. Yes, I do think women hold more compassion in situations. Yeah, we do, because sometimes we're well, first of all, because we're emotional beings. We're emotional, and so men tend to lack that emotional characteristic, so they don't tend to they tend to miss that, connecting on that level. However, to get them to connect on the mental level of understanding, regardless, of however you think, or however you feel like you produce, whatever you produce, good, bad, or evil, it's going to come back. And so, and we have to be careful what we do, how we treat people, what we do, how we say, and how we treat people, because, So look, I'm gonna go to the next question, because I'm curious to know, why do we think it's hard for victims to be believed, especially when the accused is powerful? We already know, right? A lot of times sometimes it's because of the money. A lot of the times the powerful hides behind their money. So they're throwing their money around, and they got the money. And so a lot of times our victims are, people who don't have that money to fight against that power and that money. And so they tend to not, sometimes they tend to not even fight, their accuser sometimes. And they deal with the mental anguish and the mental, turmoil of things, because they don't have the capability of fighting it. But and most accusers know that, and because of that, they utilize those strategies and the manipulation, to their advantage. So why do you guys think it's hard for victims to be believed, especially when the accused is powerful? Because most time victims don't hold much evidence, because by the time they realize they're being accused, it's too late. And like you said, money and resources. Exactly. And when I was looking at the documentary, in which I'm so glad these the jurors, I think, did a fantastic job. Like, if I can go back and like write up a blog, I'll write up a blog about this whole documentary. And I would definitely write up something based off the jurors, because I felt like they did a excellent job. They did not let whatever, because they was getting looks, they were getting stares in the courtroom and all this kind of stuff. And plus, and they was giving information based off of Diddy's attorney, to make it seem like, the victim wanted those things. Like she wanted the freak offs. She was enjoying the freak offs, and so wanted to put her in a situation where it was like, you know, damaging or defaming her, and one of the things, and that's the thing that kind of made me mad, because if you ever been a victim of domestic violence or physical violence, one of the things that a victim can um, attribute to being a victim of domestic violence or physical abuse is she's very loyal to her abuser. And sometimes that's why people be like, why don't they just leave their abuser? Sometimes it's hard because there's a sense of loyalty to that person, even though that person is abusing them. And people don't understand that, but it's because it's like it's 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 um it's kind of like a stronghold almost. And so like that person, and that's why you'll see a lot of people who experience rape or something, they kind of feel like they don't fall in love with the rapist because there's a sense of like they've connected. There's a stronghold there or whatever because of that. And then they feel like, I don't want to get that person in trouble or whatever. I don't want to press charges on that person or whatever, because they feel like there's a sense of sense of they need to protect that person, or that they don't want to get that person in trouble, kind of thing. And that's how sometimes the victims feel. And so when they was reading off those like messages and trying to portray her like, she was enjoying it, like, of course she's gonna say that. I mean, didn't you see the prior videos when he was beating her and dragging her and all that kind of stuff? Did you not think she was gonna say it? And then half of the time she was drugged. So I mean, I mean, could you not, so I was glad that the jurors did not, that was not like, that didn't infiltrate their thoughts of who that person, it didn't like misconstrued who they thought that person was, who that victim was. And they went with what was really the facts, and not what they was trying to portray her to be at the time. And so I really want to like praise the jurors for that. Baby, she was scared for her life. I go along too, like I would be terrified, anything to keep me alive. Exactly. I mean, yeah. You talking about, she's trying to move on with her life. There was times she's trying to move on with her life. And he comes looking for the guy that she's trying to move on her life with. So I mean, of course I'm gonna go along with it because I'm trying to keep the peace. Oh, you have been with them, hung with them this whole time. Must have been that bad. No, baby, I was brainwashed. Exactly. Yeah, I'm glad they could see through the veil. Exactly. I think that was very important. I think that was one of the most vital and pivotal moments in that trial, that those jurors were able to see through that. So had it went the other way, it could have been a whole lot different. So absolutely. Yeah. So, and she's seen so much. Yes. I mean, just imagine some of the things. I was thinking about the one girl that said that she didn't even remember. Somebody had made a statement about how they walked in on what was being done to her, and she didn't even remember that incident. So, and when she was reading it, I mean, it was emotional for her to read that person's statement because it was about her. And she said, I I can't tell you if it was true or not, because I don't even remember if it was done to me or not. And when I tell you, I was like choked up. That choked me up. So yeah, I mean I mean, mm, can you? That's somebody's daughter. That's somebody's child. That is somebody's child. You know. So I'm just like, mm, trying to make that so like, you know, trying to make that, home to people like, people that, I know that everybody is entitled to their own opinion or whatever, but you talking about somebody that don't even remember something that's been done to them, and somebody done wrote a whole statement about how they walked in on something being done to them. I mean, I can't even imagine. That's somebody's daughter. Yeah, and the fact that he has daughters. And let's go back to something else, because since we mentioned that, because we mentioned daughters, in the beginning of the documentary, one of the most important things that I picked up on was his relationship with his mother. And this is going to drive it home for a lot of, I think, a lot of the things that he has done or allegedly done, and who he has created himself to be. Um, we've all heard the term "the apple don't fall too far from the tree," and so kids imitate what they see. So it's very important when we grow up, when we're growing up or whatever. Um, that's the most important time as parents, for your kids. Because that's the most impactful time. So when your kid is growing up and you don't have a positive impact on your child life at that time, it's going to have a very detrimental impact on that child's life as an adult. Like what you didn't provide as a child, you're going to see those effects in that child as an adult. And I think that's what we are seeing, the effects of, childhood trauma, the effects of childhood abandonment, the effects of the things that he went through, the relationship between his mother and him, the things that he's seen, the parties he's seen, between his mother and that she had going on, those type things. And so we have to be very careful as parents, because those things are very impactful, to children. And then when they're impactful to children, they become impactful to those children when they become adults. And those behaviors, you know, that you see in children, when they be like, oh, they just acting out. Oh, they just doing that. They become adults who act out in different ways. And so we see those different ways in different people, and we count it as toxic behavior, or men who's emotional detached, or all these different scenarios. But these are the things that you see, and and that are attributed to the things that people are missing, that are missing when they have from childhood stuff. A lot of things that a lot of our issues that we deal with personally can always go back. It can always We can probably already trace it back to something from childhood. I honestly can't even trust a man who has daughters and does things like this. Whew, that's tough. like you would feel okay for them so experience this. I always feel like daughters definitely change me in perspective sometimes, and it's probably embarrassing for him with his daughters right now. Yeah, because I mean, yeah, 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 because when yeah, because when you a man that has a daughter, you know, um, regardless of how you lived your life um, prior to having that daughter, when you have that daughter, sometimes it makes you change your life because you like, I don't want my daughter, I don't want my daughter to date nobody like I was, prior to me having her, kind of thing. Because, you know, um, and most men feel like that. I don't want my daughter to date no man like me, unless they don't, they don't been, they don't did some changing and some maturing and all that kind of stuff, you know. And if they have, kudos, because some men do put in the work and say, hey, I want to put in the work. I want to do what's necessary so my daughter don't have to see that kind of stuff. You know, she don't have to, be drawn to a man like that. So, but what are you guys' thoughts when it came to when y'all, those of you who watched the documentary, what are you guys' thoughts from the beginning when it came to the relationship between him and his mother? And then especially the relationship they had when it was a fight between them. I was very appalled with that. Jada said she's the creator. That's all I'm gonna say. Ooh, yeah, yeah. That's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. It's one of those things that as parents, sometimes we're proud about our kids having some of our traits, but the bad traits, we don't ever want our kids to get the bad traits, and we don't ever want to you know for them to pick those up, see enough of it for them to pick it up. We want to be able to kind of be continually try to develop and change and be trying to change our life where they don't see that kind of lifestyle where we're trying to stay in a place like that where it contributes to them living a life or creating a life where it repeats a cycle. Okay, it keeps us in a cycle. Keeps us in a cycle. I was disgusted with that relationship. That's not normal at all. Yeah, I was. And then the way he spoke to her. Mind you, he was a teenager doing all this. Yes. Look, teenager or grown. I wish Jada and AJ would. Look, y'all will see my cute little mug shot because I would be up there like, because they already know. Don't play with y'all, mama. I don't care how old you are. And I rebuke any man who has that kind of relationship from everyone. The sad part is she learned that from someone that she chose to repeat the cycle. Yeah. It's like, yeah, yeah. What them eyes for, Jada? What them eyes for, Jada James? What are them eyes for, girl? All right, this is one of the questions we're gonna have before we wrap up. Why do we struggle as a society to believe victims when fame, money, and influence are involved? Is silence in these situations protection or is it complicity? Why are we struggling as a society to believe victims when fame, money, and influence are involved? Is silence in these situations protection or is it complicity? I don't think any of it is protection. And when you're silent, I don't think any of it's protection, because you're not protecting anyone when you're being silent. When you're being silent, I think everybody needs to speak up. If you see something, say something. Um, you know, and then when it comes to victims, I think, you know, always give a voice to a victim, because we don't know what they experienced. And so, and I'm a firm believer, we should never, ever say, you know, what, you know, um, what could never happen, because somebody's situation one day could be ours the next. So always give voice to a victim, because we would never know. It's not enabling. Right. We don't ever want to enable, you know, um, regardless. I know we're not in the industry. However, you know, just thinking about us being normal people, because we're not in the industry, we still want to be able to give voice to a victim and believe, someone when they're said, they said something has happened. Now, granted, we don't want to accuse somebody, without all the facts. We can, you know, check out the facts, because they're allegedly, being accused of something until the facts have been proven. However, we still need to give voice to the victim. But honestly, our system is so messed up where people are scared to even speak up because, again, money is power, and they might know people. Yeah, yeah, but you know, um, we can't let that be the reason that a lot of people suffer in silence either. The one lady that worked for him, that was, I think she was his first victim, and she didn't tell anyone. And then years later, when somebody had accused him of whatever, and then when this had went, it had went kind of like notary or whatever, that's when she finally had her voice, because she was like, I'm glad somebody finally spoke up. Now I can speak up. And it had been years. It had been years. And she was so scared to speak up. She was like, you know, somebody else spoke up. So finally now I can speak up. And I thought that was so sad. Just imagine, the suffering and all that stuff that she was dealing with emotionally, mentally, the stuff that she was suppressing, all because, people are not believing victims, because there's people with, money and power and sitting in positions, you know, and these situations are being protected, because of that. I don't turn a blind eye to anything. I wouldn't want that done with me. You never know. Exactly. One day it could be you. Exactly. We never know. We can never say what can never happen to us or never could be done to us. You know. So, if you have not watched this documentary, I urge you to watch it. You know, I know you probably feel like you've heard enough and you've heard people talk about it, whatever, but watch it where you can base your own opinion off of it. My one last question would be to you guys, because those of you who watched it and those who don't care to watch it or whatever, but my question would be to you, what responsibility, we have as consumers, um, um, when we continue to support artists, accused of serious harm and crimes such as this. What responsibility do we have? Is it fair to the victims when we continue to support these consumers and artists accused of these serious crimes and harms? What responsibility are you taking as a consumer? Do you feel like you have any responsibility? Do you feel like, you should take on any responsibility? Do you feel like, no, he won't get no more of my money? And then and I mean, and we didn't even like dive into like the Biggie and the Tupac and all that kind of stuff that, the kind of, which I kind of knew that anyways, but, just kind of opening your eyes up to how all that stuff played out, you know, um, showing how much of an influence that was, how much of an influence he was. And, you know, those type things, it was just, and those influences cause the lives of people. And so, it's a lot. It's a lot. And so we have to, you know, just looking at a lot of that stuff, it's a lot. It's a lot to it's a lot to digest. And then when you're watching it, for you to, personally to digest it for yourself, to voice your own opinion or whatever, because everybody's engaged with the topic and the conversation or whatever. So there's a lot of emotions and a lot of dialogue going back and forth, and mixed emotions, divisiveness, everything going on. And so so people are divided, when it comes to that. You still have his loyal fans. You still have, in those who are split and saying, I'm with the victims, all this kind of stuff. And so hey, Mr. Jesse. And so you have to, like, watch it and be able to be able to get your own opinion about it without hearing all the other stuff, so it does not like skew your opinion or your view about anything. But you know no but we're talking about allegations, not convictions. We're talking about patterns, voices, and systems that you know that allow abuse to go unchecked. How a system will allow these things to go unchecked. And we have to be mindful, that someone can be influenced, and when they be influenced that way, there's gonna be some things that can be flawed, and when there's people who are out there building empires or whatever, there's possibility they out there doing things and causing harm. So what do we do with the truth that is presented to us based off of a documentary and the things that have been presented to us in court, based off of his trial? So, you know, those are the thoughts I want to leave you guys with. This documentary opened my eyes. I don't know if it opened yours, if you feel like it was biased, based off of, Netflix and who produced it. Should celebrities be held high at a higher standard or the same standard as everyone else? What part of the documentary stuck with you the most, and why it stuck with you? I think the part of it that stuck with me the most, I think, was the beginning, the relationship with his mother, because I think that drove who he is and who he became. And I think that's what I took from everything, like who he really is and who he became, is, from what I got from the documentary, is based off the relationship and who he is from his mother, the relationship he had with his mother. And so, and that's what stuck with me the most. And I think when we look on back onto things, how we deal with people and situations and circumstances, a lot of things fall back onto our childhoods and the things that we deal with from childhood. And so, so it has a lot of impact how we move forward, how we act as adults, how we, how we deal with, past traumas and development as adults and all that kind of thing. But conversations, conversation like this aren't comfortable, but it's necessary conversation that we have, engage in dialogue so that people can hear different, opinions and hear different views of other people. We don't grow by just staying silent. There's other networks and social media platforms who are discussing and talking about it as well. So I decided we should be engaging and talking about it too. I want to hear what you guys think about it because, we're women. Majority of our platform is women, and so I want to know how the women feel because women that a lot of the contributors to that documentary and victims of um, uh, Diddy was women, and I wanted to know what you guys' thoughts were. And so, we heal by telling the truth. Even when it's messy, even when it hurts, even when it exposes people and exposes, what how people think of other people, you know, um, you know, but Chit Chat Pod, provides that platform for us to hold that space to have real conversations. And so that's what we want to be able to do moving forward, not just today, but you know um, more of these kind of engaging conversations in 2026 as well. So that's all we have for today, guys. So thank you for trusting Chit Chat Podcast to hold this space for your real conversation today on the Diddy documentary. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know that the holidays are coming up, so I want to wish you guys a very special holiday season from Chit Chat Podcast. And I hope that those of you who got the prizes from last week episode, be on the lookout for those prizes this week. They should be hitting your addresses this week. Thank you guys for chiming in with us last week and playing the games. And on our holiday fun day last Sunday, we will have I think we have Mr. Juan next Sunday, the Love Doctor next Sunday, I think. I'm not sure. I have to let Jada verify that. But we will have, and then we have another episode. We'll close out with another episode of a special guest that's coming on for our women on our alopecia segment. So women who are dealing with alopecia, hair loss, hair thinning, and all of that. This will be a special segment for you guys. So make sure you tune in for that. But as we approach 2026, we're going to be having some new episodes coming up for 2026. My first episode in January for 2026, I will be doing a episode. Hopefully, I haven't confirmed it yet, but hopefully I'll get a confirmation date. But I will have my sister queens on from the Miss Petite USA pageant that will be held in Chicago in July 2026. So some of the girls that I'll be competing against for um, the Elite Miss title will be in my Queens group, and I'll see how many of those can come on the platform. And so we'll be able to chat and talk about that and what to expect for this pageant coming up, and chat with them. So that'll be upcoming for the new year, and and then give you guys a timeline for the pageant that's going to be coming up and keep y'all up to date on that. So But some exciting things are going on, and my retirement. So yeah. So we're pretty excited. But thank you guys for chiming in week after week. We appreciate you guys. Until next Sunday, you guys have a great evening, and we will talk to you soon. Have a good one. Bye.